This is the One Piece Podcast, episode 496 for the week of Monday, November 20th, 2017. My name is Zach.
And my name is Ed.
How's it going, Ed?
It's going all right. I just recorded almost 2 hours with Steven. So this is going to be a long episode.
Yeah, it is. So, Ed, what are we talking about with a very special guest and translator for One Piece and Weekly Shonen Jump, Stephen Paul, this week?
That is the third volume of the One Piece magazine, mostly the interview with Eiichiro and special guests, mystery special guests. It's the whole different structure of the interview this time than the last two volumes, but you're just going to have to listen and find out.
Yeah, and if you haven't had a chance to pick up any of the One Piece volumes, they may still be available on Amazon Japan. They were available at Kinokuniya, at Anime
I still
New York
saw
City.
Volume 3. I saw Volume 3 available at the Kino in Chicago this week.
And the Volume 3 is what we're talking about. So if you haven't had a chance to pick it up, please do. They're really cool, even if you don't speak Japanese. And the thing is, you don't need to, because Steven will be going through it with everyone here today on the podcast. Speaking of Kino and picking up volumes of the magazine at Anime NYC, we did a panel this past weekend. It was our 20 Years of One Piece panel. It was a lot of fun. I really want to thank everyone who showed up for showing up, and thank Kelly for all her hard work during that panel and her contribution.
I watched the whole thing.
On Periscope, backwards, I guess you could call it. You watched the audience.
You can put that up on YouTube. Just superimpose the PowerPoint presentation over the audience's heads.
And then, so as long as you don't see me and Kelly, you're fine. I mean, if I had more video skill, if there's anyone with video skill who's ever interested in helping us out at the podcast, please let us know. But you know that we're not going to post that separately because it is very similar to our Otakon / the one that we posted already. So the only things we added were a little more information about the Kyoto show, which is cool, including a little bit of a clip from what was featured there. We also gave a little more of a tour of One Piece around the world and a few other little things, and we, as usual, had cool prizes. Now, I'm going to have I've been getting a lot of questions recently about, what conventions we're going to be going to in the near future. I'm going to have a somewhat busy year next year, so the answer to that question is few, if any, for me. I don't know about the rest of our crew, but, I'll try and make sure, we have some people at some conventions next year. But unfortunately, as we get older, these kind of things become tougher and tougher to do. I would think, right, Ed?
Sure.
Thank you. We also have today, not just the special volume 3 of the magazine recap, we also have a little bit of pieced together for you. We also, in a couple weeks, for our 500th episode on December 18th, we'll have an interview with the Japanese voice of Ace, Toshio Furukawa, that we recorded back at Otakon. Also, the voice actress for Gimlet, who happens to be his wife, is on that interview, so that's going to be a lot of fun. We're going to have that on again on December 18th. That's for our 500th episode. And we're going to have some plans for that hopefully I will be announcing next week or the week after. So,
all right.
Yeah, keep an eye out for that. I think without further ado, Ed, why don't we get into Steven and our discussion of One Piece Magazine Volume 3.
All right. This is a really, really, it's a really sort of personal interview. It goes further behind the scenes than I thought.
Then I am interested in listening right now.
All right, this is our special segment on the third edition of the One Piece magazine. Here with Steven.
Hey.
And, this is going to be basically, we're going through the majority of the Oda interview and anything else that we find interesting in this magazine. But, Steven, what do you got for us?
Well, let's see. The first thing I guess most people are going to notice when they look at the front cover is that, like all of the other ones, they show the wanted poster that comes in the back of the magazine, and that was of particular interest in this case because it does have Sabo's wanted poster, and he is listed at 602 million berries, wanted dead or alive.
I love the paper this is printed on, by the way.
The poster?
Yeah, the poster. It's almost like this really thick, sort of really cool texture paper.
I have not removed any of them from my magazines, so I will take your word for it.
That was like the first thing I did. I'm like, oh man, I might have to destroy this a little bit to get this poster, but it's going to be worth it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I guess if you're going to make use of them, if you're going to hang them up or something, then that's fine. But I found it funny that they encourage you to take them out and then crumple them up so that they look all fucked up.
But that would be hard. But like that paper is actually very thick. People are going to hurt their hands doing that.
Okay. So yeah, he's we were just reconfirming before we started that he is 52 million higher than Ace and 102 million higher than Luffy, at least for the moment. So yeah, there you go. And it also it segues right into the final installment of the little manga that Oda drew about Ace, Luffy, and Sabo, and it starts off with a nice picture of them doing the brothers cups, and they're declaring we are brothers, and this is all in their grown up state. And
when I see that, I think of the movie A Mighty Wind.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
What happened?
Yes. What happened? Yes. Oh God, no, I can't. Fred. What's the last name?
Oh, Fred Willard. Yeah.
Willard. Yes. Anyways, neither here nor there. So yeah, if you flip to the first page, then there's this. It looks comedic, but it's actually I found quite a bit of pathos here. That the very first panel here is of Luffy. He's sleeping on the sunny. And he's got the big sleep bubble, and his mouth is wide open. He's just loving it, and he's got his hand up in the air to do the toast. And then he wakes up, and nope, they're gone. No Luffy, no Ace, no Sabo.
But he's got his crew.
Yeah, he's got the rest of the crew, and then there's some time has passed because then you have Zoro and Sanji that are repeating like, what, you want us to punch you? And Luffy's like, yeah, you got to hit me because if I'm having dreams like this, it just shows I'm not making progress. I can't move onward if I'm still dreaming about stuff like that. And so then they look at each other and then proceed to soundly beat Luffy, and then he's protesting like, it was just a dream. Jeez, what's the big problem? And they're like, well, we have no idea what you're talking about. First of all, we don't know what dream. And Sanji is like, yeah, and I owed you one for what you did to the refrigerator yesterday. So the usual stuff on
they do the matching panel. They do the exact same setup in the top half of this.
Yes, and then we go to Sabo's page where he is doing the exact same thing on the big old the black dragon ship that the revolutionaries use. And there's Jinbei's best friend Hack. He's there. And some woman who looks very suspiciously like Robin sitting at the table.
For a second, I thought Hack was wearing fishnets, which would be funny because he's a fish man. But no, I think it's just sort of poofy pants that have a design on them.
So they're off answering some civilian SOS, and they've been stuck. They haven't had any breeze, so the ship is just kind of sitting out there. And then Koala peers in and notices that Sabo seems to be a little teary-eyed, and she's kind of she's not exactly teasing him, but she's like, did you have that dream again? The one that's been tormenting you for 2 years. And then Sabo literally erupts into flames with anger that, how dare you make fun of my, my pain or whatever. And
it's funny because isn't this before he even gets the fruit?
No, I would assume this is probably after they left.
Oh, okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, and so he's lighting the ship on fire and gets scolded by Koala, and then he also says to himself like, oh yeah, he scolded me too, ha ha ha. and they're all like, what? What's he talking about?
Huh.
I'm like, okay, let's keep moving. I wonder who would be scolding Sabo. And then there's a little afterword from Oda about this little manga that he drew, which was kind of interesting. And so he says, "Thank you for reading this little omake manga. It's not really meant to be this important story for you to follow. It was just there was a suggestion from the production team for the One Piece magazine. They wanted me to draw just a little bonus thing that would show what would happen if Luffy, Ace, and Sabo were drawn adventuring together, if they had, if nothing had happened, if they had all grown up together." And I told them, well, for one thing, all three of them would want to be the captain, so that would never happen. They would never adventure together. And also, if that had ever happened, then Luffy would not have met the crew that he has today, and he would be a different person because of that. So it basically the entire worldview collapses of One Piece. So nope, can't do it. But if I also understood that there were lots of readers who wanted to see them all grown up in the same panel together, being able to have a conversation or something. And so it occurred to me that if the three of them were going to meet up in any particular place, there's only one that it could be. So I would have to use that as the conditional, the what if scenario. And I can expect that there will probably be lots of blowback from the fans. But if I'm going to do this, then I need to draw it with just as much intensity as I would any actual canon chapter of the manga. Sabo and Luffy would if they imagined this what if scenario, then no doubt they would be pained by this the unchangeable past, the inescapable past that they can't escape from. So nothing will change in the main story, of course, but I hope that you enjoy this very serious take on an omake manga, and I apologize if anyone was put off by it.
I feel like this is what Oda gets to work on these weeks and the weeks when the manga isn't coming out.
Yeah, well, yeah, he does get lots of other work stuff, and we'll be hearing some of that in the interview. But before we get to the main course, as it were, let's see, what are some of the other highlights as we usually do this, flipping through the...
Yeah. There's some character sketch images of Germa that were in the back that were kind of interesting, but there's
not particularly wide or varied. There, yeah. He had a pretty clear vision of how he wanted to do them. On that note, there was also his plot flow sketches for Dressrosa, which look incredibly intense, not surprisingly, because of the amount of character maneuvering that had to go on in that arc, and all the various plots that had to get resolved and so on.
Mm-hmm. There's a continuation of the Ace novella.
Yes, there's the Ace novel, and then there's in the back there's the Robin character novel, which that and what were the other ones? There was a Sanji one, and I think there was another Luffy one, maybe. But those are the stories, not the Ace one, but these Straw Hat stories in the backs of the magazines are the ones that got collected into the one. I think it's called One Piece Stories. That's just what it is. It's a collected book of these little short story pieces that just went on sale, I believe, with the latest volume at the beginning of this month. So they reused they got some extra mileage out of those, I guess.
They're the one with the editors exploring a treasure island. That's a pretty funny one. They just sort of taking goofy pictures of themselves.
Some more Wikipedia Commons pirate information about Sir John Hawkins, Sir Francis Drake, and William Kidd. So you get some supernova inspiration there.
Interview with a figure designer.
Yeah, they did an interview with Tarako, who is a voice actor. She does a lot of she's one of those actresses who has a super high pitched voice, and so she does a lot of childcare. I believe she plays the little kid version of Chibi Maruko, maybe. I'm sure I know that I have heard her in other roles, but we also have the Oda's playlist. Which
a little more Japanese focused this time than previously.
Yeah, this theme. So the first one was the Whole Cake Island theme, and the second one I think was the gangster theme, and this one is Luffy versus Sanji. So I guess it is less like genre influenced and is a little more straightforward. And so yeah, there is more J-pop and J-rock, but there's some interesting ones. He does put in the opening theme from The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly from Ennio Morricone.
There's the Red Wimps. I think that's from the Your Name soundtrack, probably.
It's this one, the song is literally called Weekly Shonen Jump. So apparently it's a ballad that is an homage to Weekly Shonen Jump.
There you go.
Yeah, okay, let's see here. Yeah, he says the music video made a splash because they linked the lyrics of the song to the manga that were running at the time that they put it out. So that would be kind of fun, especially like to go back and look at 10 years later or whatever. Say, oh yeah, I remember that series. There's also some Lauryn Hill for the classic The Miseducation of Lauryn Hill.
A couple of songs that I'm pretty sure are from old Apple iPod commercials. Yeah, Are You Gonna Be My Girl and Jerk It Out. Those are definitely Apple.
Yep.
Yeah. And also, I Don't Feel Like Dancing by Scissor Sisters. I was not expecting to see that there, but that's an old favorite.
And then the song that everybody loves, I Got a Feeling, by the Black Eyed Peas, not by the Beatles. Yeah. There's also a song by Karuli, which is a really, really, really good Japanese rock band. I have not listened to them I have not listened to any of their newer material in the last like 10 years or so, but they're very. I think this is a newer one, 2012, but Everybody Feels the Same. I'll have to check that one out.
We know how Oda loves dad rock.
Yeah, it makes sense. He's solidly in that demographic right now.
Exactly.
Yeah, and as usual, this is all this tie-in with this AWA streaming service, which I have no idea if that's like equivalently as big as Spotify or Pandora, but I would assume since it's getting pushed here that it's probably a pretty big one. So that it is most of the same type of stuff, but
I just want to mention that there is a horrifying image on page 127 that you should look at.
All right, let's see here. 127. That is okay. This is in the assistant manga. Each of the magazines has a little short sort of comedic manga from one of the assistants or former assistants, and this one seems to suggest that Oda is chowing down on some dried squid snacks, and there's some kind of warning. I'm not sure.
Spicy, maybe?
Well, no, it says like by drying out they call it pudding tie, so like pudding body, or maybe it's like the puttification of the dried squid or something.
Wow.
It could expand or something like that. Maybe I'm not sure. And then Oda is blissfully chowing down on.
It's the fish head with human teeth.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes, eating squid tentacles. Very, very gross.
So I think I tweeted a picture of that when I first got this thing a month or two ago, and
Yeah.
wow.
I wonder what. Let me see who this artist is. Okay, so this is Yusaku Shibata, and so he has done some series in Jump. He did Yoake Mono, which that was probably what 2 years ago. I would say it was it was a one and done, but I'm sure if anyone has been a subscriber, it was probably after they started doing all the jump starts, no matter what. So.
There's actually a lot of great images in this Eyes of Eiichiro staff comic just for Oda's fish head character, because he's drawn in lots of interesting positions.
Yeah, this guy got some good mileage out of the facial expressions.
I also like the particularly the annoyed with the cigarette in his mouth and the like squinting eyes on page 122. That's a good one.
Yeah,
anyway, I don't know if there's anything else really to talk about outside of the interview.
Yeah. So this is all the normal stuff. However, the interview is a little different this time because so the first two installments of the Oda interviews were it was mostly like him talking about his process and kind of talking just a little, I guess, personal background, like what would you want to do if you could take a break, and who do you look up to, where do you get inspiration, et cetera, et cetera. So it was pretty much just straight from these thoughts and information straight from the lips of Eiichiro Oda. This one is a crosstalk interview, so it is Oda talking to other people, much like the Color Walk interviews. Only this time, he is talking with a number of his historical manga editors, and so we're going to start with the guy who was his editor when he did one shots before he even did One Piece, and then they handed it off to a different editor when he got the series. So this is some stuff that I don't know if some of this info has ever come out quite so directly from the people involved. So that's really interesting, and then we talked to some of the other editors, some of which you will remember, like Bati Jean-Baptiste Hattori. So we'll go through. This is kind of like a little bit more like a historical look through Oda's career. So
it's like going back and interviewing all your old girlfriends.
Yeah, it's kind of this is your life for Oda's career. We will start, and the first one here is going to be Kushima. So Kushima is they call him the 0th editor of One Piece. So yes, we're going to start with the story of what led up to the serial of One Piece. And Kushima says, okay, so we're getting back to stuff that's more than 20 years ago. So this is, kind of relying on what memory there still is, but their first meeting was at the Hop Step Awards, and that's the old one shots and like rookie awards. I think they may have changed the name by now, but that is when Oda had submitted his one shot called Ikiyako. That was kind of like his first big pro attempt, and he won the award for that one. And so Kushima says yes, and me calling him to tell him that he had won the award. That was the first time we had spoken. And Oda says, as a matter of fact, I had drawn Wanted, the short story Wanted, and I got the Tezuka award, like a runners-up award for that one. But at the time, the editorial staff that was handling the Tezuka Awards was actually the monthly Shonen Jump staff, and so I had this there was like this horrible mistake that happened where it was like, okay, well, if you keep going on this track, like if you follow this up, you're going to end up getting a serial in Monthly Jump. and I was like, no way. I tried again. I started over. I was like, I want to get into Weekly Jump. And so then I came up with Ikiyako, and I submitted that one. And Kushima-san was the one who looked over that work, and he gave me a call. And so then it was like, okay, now I've got my editor. We're gonna try to get me into Weekly Shonen Jump. And Ikiyako ended up winning the Hop Step Award, or one of the Hop Step Awards. They obviously they give out awards for many works at the same time. But I thought, like, okay, so I'm past the level of getting these sort of rookie or newcomer awards now, and I'm past that stage. So I quit college, and after 1 year, and came to Tokyo to get started as a pro. And I was working with Kushima-san the entire time from here until I made my professional debut. And I remember it was really hard because he would not, he would not approve my drafts at first. He would never accept them. And Kushima said, so Ikiyako won that award in 1993. And the next one-shot Monsters got printed in one of the Weekly Jump quarterly special issues, which was in the fall of 1994. So yeah, it might have been about a year that we didn't run any of his works, but obviously it wasn't like he was just sitting around not drawing manga that whole time. So he was basically drawing every week. He was trying to come up with something. So I'm sure that I must have turned down like tons and tons of his stuff. He's got a whole bunch of these stories that never made it out. And Oda says, it was after I came to Tokyo that I actually met Kushima-san in person. So I was like, okay, so this guy is going to be my editor, and I just assumed that, and then I was like, man, this guy really he really picks apart my stuff. Like, he's got so many complaints about it. And I came to Tokyo because I was like so confident in my ability, and obviously I wasn't going to take anything in to show a Jump that I wasn't supremely confident in, and so it just never occurred to me that anyone was going to possibly have some issues, some corrections and advice about my work. So
this must be around the time that he started working on Kenshin, then, isn't it?
Oh, we'll get there. We'll get there. This will be very thorough. I brought it in, and then he was just like bam, 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 but just pointing out everything that was wrong with it. And I remember every time that this would happen, I would be so mad. But the thing is, like, what he said was correct. At the time, at first, I always just assumed that my way was right. But then later on, I would come around to it, and I would see how I was wrong. So, so what would happen is, what they do is when a draft is considered by for running, the editor will take it to the group. They'll take it to the meeting. And this is, if you've read Bakuman, some of what this is like, but this is just for one shots. And so I was going to get my draft. I wanted to get my draft to be seen in the meeting. And Kushima-san would have these different corrections, and he would say, you gotta watch out for this, you gotta watch out for that. And I would be like, no way, that's not true. That's just your opinion, man. And so I would just say, just take it as it is. I would say, please take this and just send it to the meeting. Just see what happens. And then the rest of the editors would all say the exact same things. And so I would have to be like, okay, I'm sorry, you were right. You're right the first time. But I remembered, when it just wasn't happening. Like, it wasn't coming together. I wasn't getting approved. I just remember thinking, like, man, why won't they take my work? And Kushima says, now I knew right from the start with Oda that he was different. That, what I did was I made sure that, you know, there's that acceptable line for rookie manga where you're like right there. Yeah, this is probably good enough. And I made sure that when he got to that point, I intentionally still rejected his stuff, because, you know, in other words, I raised the hurdle significantly higher than other people would have it in his situation. So I'm sure it was really tough, but there was a reason for that, you know, because there was a time, you know, at the time back in the you know, early 90s, mid 90s, there was this kind of inclination that it just seemed like all of the you know, the better an artist was at the start, the more certain it was that their first series would end at 10 weeks. You know, they would get through the one volume and that would be it. And the reason for that is that the better an artist is, the more confidence they have in themselves, and the less likely they are to listen to the editor. And so they just want to do, you know, they're going to do what they want to do, and because they, you know, they feel like they know what they know what their quality is, and because they have this skill already, because they have the talent, they come up with something that ends up being kind of difficult for your average reader to get into, and it just doesn't win broad appeal, and then it ends up you know, getting knocked out. And so you know, once they've been beaten, you know, their ego has been soundly beaten, then they see like, oh, okay, so this is how the world works. They kind of figure out what the actual conditions are, and that's, you know, that's their chance to gain what they need to know to succeed. And then, you know, on the second try, then it's like, boom, okay, now it all came together. And so that's kind of how it was working. But with Oda's case, you know, he had known or had believed, like, ever since he was a kid. So this is a long running thing. Like, okay, I'm going to run a story. I'm going to run a manga about either pirates or wizards or ninja. You know, he had this extremely strong fixation on, you know, this idea that he wanted to run with. And I thought, like, man, if that is a one and done, then, you know, will he ever recover? You know, and I told myself, like, we cannot let that happen. You know, his first hit has to be a success. And so that's why I was extremely strict on him.
This is more candid than I was imagining.
Mm-hmm, yeah. And then there's a little a picture of the Eiichiro cover page with the monk and his little staff. And the next page, so Oda says, even still, like, up until Monsters, I felt like the sailing was fairly smooth there, but from that point to getting the one shot of Romance Dawn run, that there was a long gap between those. And you know, I just assumed, like, oh, I was going to be a pro artist in no time, and, you know, my stuff wasn't getting through, and you know, Kushima would give me you know, lots of strict feedback. So, you know, yeah, we butted heads a lot of the time. You know, I'm the type that I don't understand things until I experience them myself. So, you know, I would put stuff out, and you know, I would get sunk, and, you know, try again. That was the repetition. That was the pattern. And you know, I just thought, like, okay, well, Kushima-san, all this data that he's working on, the stuff that he's using to make his decisions, that's all from the past, and, you know, that doesn't apply to me. I always thought so. You know, I honestly could not understand why I was failing until, you know, I actually failed. So basically, I wasn't that clever. I wasn't, you know, I wasn't that adaptive to this kind of critique. But because of that, I feel like I really got a strong fundamental base built up. You know, I had all of this experience where I knew, like, okay, this is where I screwed up. That's where I screwed up. You know, I had all of that experience to draw on before I ended up, you know, starting my serialized story. And that was thanks to Kushima-san, even if it was incredibly frustrating. So then the interviewer, the moderator asks, what were your meetings, your in-person meetings like? Kushima says, the meetings, I remember being really nervous. There was, it was this new kid, a rookie. He hadn't even made his published debut. But I felt as nervous around him, or as tense around him, as if he were already, one of the Jump artists. So I was very clear about my words. So, for example, like if you say the word mountain, there's a big difference between Mount Fuji and Mount Takao, which is a much, much, much smaller mountain, I think near Tokyo. So if you just say the word mountain, it could be taken to mean either of those, and how the way that you would think about either of those. So first of all, you have to be very strict about your definition of the word mountain. Like that was the level of specificity that I had with him. Obviously, it wasn't always like that, but it was often the case where I was extremely careful with what I said. Oda says, what I remember Kushima-san saying most of all was make a character, build your characters. I heard it so many times, but I just couldn't understand it. I thought my thought at the time was like, well, I don't really need to, because one shots and a serial are different things. A one shot is kind of like a movie, and in a movie, you don't necessarily have to have every character like completely stand out and, have this very expressive personality, right? As long as the story is good and it unfolds at the right pace, the one shot will be good. That was what I believed. But once, then going on that logic, I kept, submitting these stories, and they kept getting rejected at the meetings. And Kushima said he just kept saying it's because you don't have characters. These aren't real characters. He just kept saying that and kept saying that. And he also kept saying, like, your girls, they are not cute. Your girl characters are not cute. And everything was making me furious.
Oh, man.
And Kushima said one of the reasons that I made him draw so many one-shots was because I wanted him to draw all of these characters, just keep drawing and drawing and drawing and coming up with more characters, because I wanted him to stock his drawers, so to speak. I wanted him to have all of those ideas to call upon. And Oda said, yep, that really helped a lot. And, I realized later on that it was a big deal, but at the time, I just wanted to get my my one shot in the magazine, in the quarterly magazines. That's all I cared about. So there was Kushima-san says there was a difference of there was a nearly 2-year gap between Monsters and Romance Dawn running, and that whole time I was having him draw manga, and I gave him assistant training in several different studios. So Oda says the first one was at Shinobu Kaitani Sensei's place for about a month. And then after that, there was Masaya Tokuhiro and Nobuhiro Watsuki. After I left college there were many people I knew who graduated college before going into the world of manga. So basically, no matter where I went, I was always the youngest. I never met anyone who was my age or younger. Everywhere I went, it was always like, oh my God, he's so young. Oh my God, he's so young. They seem to think that having like a teenager in their midst was like a very rare and special thing. So they actually treated me all very nicely. They saw me as this, cute little kid just sort of hanging around. So at the first place, Kaitani Sensei's place, that was my first trip into, a professional manga studio. And so everything that I saw was new and fresh and exciting. At the time, or a long time ago, I thought, drawing backgrounds is boring stuff. Like, oh, it's so annoying. And I was stunned when I learned that like most of what assistants do is drawing backgrounds. I will admit that in my younger days, I was, depending on your point of view, I was either extremely honest or extremely rude. So I would just say stuff like, "This sucks. This is boring. Man, this is too hard." and Kushima agrees, like, "Yeah, that's pretty rude."
Sounds like Luffy.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. You can see the resemblance. So yeah, Oda's
he was like
yeah,
that when
man.
he worked at the restaurant too, wasn't he?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Oda's like, man, God, I was such a brat. But then I would see, the senpais at the studio, and they were just, plugging away at the backgrounds and working on it. And, the backgrounds were amazing. Like their work was so good. And that was the signal to me where I was like, oh crap, I need to take this seriously. And that kind of got my head straight. This is professional work. This is clear. I was wrong to assume that the background was just, basically an optional thing, an extra thing if you want to put it in there. So from that point on, I got, a bit more, my interest in the backgrounds grew bit by bit. And so I was carefully listening to everything that the senpais were saying and that Kaitani sensei was saying. And so I absorbed all this kind of stuff. And Kushima wants to know, did they scold you for anything at the time? And he says, Kaitani sensei was extremely nice. And I'm sure that partially he was overlooking a lot of stuff because I wasn't even 20 at the time. So it might be hard to believe, but at the time there was a TV drama that I was watching. I've been watching it, keeping up with it week to week, and there was a time once where it just so happened that my work shift was going to overlap with this drama, and I was like, man, I want to watch the show. I want to watch my story, and Kaitani Sensei said, okay, we'll use that hour as our meal break period. So I was like, oh my God, he's too nice. He's so nice. And he says, if somebody said that to me now, I would kick his ass. So, he was committing all of these kind of rude faux pas, and including his attitude towards the background. So, but
it's interesting in Japanese culture who gets to get away with that kind of stuff.
Right. But he says, including all of these things, my time in my first time in a professional studio was just kind of, it was mind blowing. It was, I was just overwhelmed by everything. So next up was Tokuhiro Sensei. And Oda says Tokuhiro Sensei was much stricter. But I guess I have to admit I was also kind of rude there too. There was at the time I wasn't really that into AM radio, and Tokuhiro Sensei would always play the AM radio, and I would be like, "Hey, can we listen? When can we listen to the FM instead?" And so it was one of those things where like the new kid comes in, and here's the studio where this guy's had a multi-decade career, and I'm going in there and like, hey, why are you doing it this way? Can't we do it this other way instead? But the nice thing is that it seems like a lot of mangaka are actually they can be fairly flexible at times. So Tokuhiro Sensei was like, okay, well, yeah, maybe we can put an FM station on instead for a little bit. Kushima says, like with Kaitani Sensei, Tokuhiro Sensei was, one of my artists that I worked with in Jump. So I was noticing, or I was thinking to myself, like, after I sent Oda there, it seems like their tastes changed a little bit, or his taste seems to have changed a little bit because of Oda being there. And so Oda says, yeah, it seemed like like they would indulge my requests to some extent. But Tokihiro Sensei, helped me learn a lot of stuff. And the biggest thing in particular was that he was very punctual about his work. So it was like Osamu Akimoto, the author of Kochikame, where the work was like, it was like robotic. It was like you were always done on time. He never took a week off. It was never late. The planning and the execution of the plan was incredible. Like when you have color pages come in, then that just means that the deadline comes even earlier, and it's really tough. But he would still get it done at the exact same, at the exact right pace. And so that was amazing to me. And also the fact that he didn't cut corners to do it. At the time, a lot of manga where you would draw or when you had clothes, they would just use a screen tone to do the pattern on the clothes. But he would not do that. He would draw the pattern on the clothes, and that was like, as the saying is in Japanese, the scales fell from my eyes. It was a wake up call. He was like, oh man, ever since that point, I started drawing the detail on the clothes as well. And not only does that make it a little more like you get that sort of hand drawn feel from the art when you look at it. But it was also a chance to kind of more fully dive into designing the outfits for your characters. You can kind of do a little more fashion with them. I kind of learned that not cutting corners can actually, make the process more fun. You can get more out of it that way. I got a lot of the fundamentals kind of beaten into me there. So that was working. Let's see. That was at the end of the series. The new King of the Jungle, Tar-chan. I remember being very happy when that ended, and he said, hey, next series, you're welcome to come back. Kushima says, I had you go to Tokuhiro Sensei's studio because, like you just said, he is a very, he's a very strict and a very regimented and very fast-working artist, and I wanted you to learn the proper rhythm for a serial in a week in week out weekly serial. And I thought after that I was like, okay, well, I should put him into I should send him to someone who draws comedy and then to someone who draws serious drama, because I knew that Oda, you had a taste for both, you had a skill for both. And so I wanted you to learn that from Tokuhiro Sensei. And after that was Watsuki Sensei. And Oda says, so at Watsuki Sensei's studio, there was some more, shall we say, human drama or interpersonal drama. In terms of technical skill, I also, I learned a lot from there. The stuff that I the stuff that I learned and was able to develop under Tokuhiro Sensei, those were the things that Watsuki Sensei praised me for and complimented me for. He was like, oh yeah, you've got the fundamentals down. Watsuki is someone who is very particular about his pen, about his penmanship. That it's like he focuses on the beauty of the pen stroke. So he would, every single line, he would be hyper focused on. And I'm the type who is more about less about the artistry and more about the sort of the expression. So we're kind of opposites in that sense. But I was just blown away by how dedicated he was to, his particular artistic style and vision. At the time, I wasn't really that good at inking. And I was better. I knew, like, oh yeah, my what they call the underneath drawing, the pencil foundation. I was better at that. I knew. And then when it came to inking, it just felt like, I'm not feeling the page the way that it just doesn't seem like it's coming together. And so it was, it can be tricky inking. I think there are a lot of new artists who, when it comes to going from the pencil work to the inking, all of a sudden, like, rather than looking even better, it actually looks worse. So I asked Watsuki Sensei, what can I do to get better at this? And he literally just said, you do it over again. Like, just you get used to it. That was all he said. And when Watsuki Sensei was a Riki artist, he would always use the G pen. Now, gosh, I could have sworn I looked this up because there's a different name, but it's one of those like inking pen, like an inkwell type pen where you dip it. And
a fountain pen, or
yeah, kind of, but it's something like sort of in between there. And he was using that, and he said, like, you just use it until it feels right. And I was like, oh wow, so that even this experienced master had his kind of learning period. And so I would draw all these different things with this G pen, trying to get used to it. And so yeah, I was at Watsuki Sensei's studio for about 4 months. And Kushima says, and you were still submitting your drafts that whole time. And Oda's like, yeah, but they wouldn't get through. I would go to those those quarterly issues, and I would read the one shots from these other new artists, and I would be like, what? Like, mine is so much better than this. How can this be? And Kushima says
he had high expectations for him.
Mm-hmm, yeah. And Kushima says he would go, at the editorial office, he would say stuff like, oh man, like the editors are crazy to reject that. Like they have to be out of their minds to reject this. And some of the other people at the office would be like, man, Oda, he can he really speaks his mind. But like I said earlier, it was all according to a plan. And Oda's just he's so stubborn, and like if he most new artists, like if you just say, like, you should just do this, they would follow your lead. They would be like, okay, well, I'll come back and I'll do that instead. But with Oda, it would be like, Kushima, you said this earlier, so I interpreted it like this, and he would come back with a different answer from what I expected. And that was and it would be better because of that. And so that was like mind blowing to me. Oda says, at the time, like, I just was so frustrated. All I could think of was like, why won't they accept it? Why won't they accept it? But I could tell that there was love behind those answers. So I couldn't just completely hate you. So after that, there were 2 different Romance Dawn one shots, and then lastly, it led to One Piece's serial starting. Kushima says the first Romance Dawn, when that got selected for the seasonal magazine, and right around the time that that got fully drafted and completed, that was when the editor switch happened. And Oda says, my one shots weren't getting selected, and all these other people were making their professional debuts, and I was really frustrated. And so I decided, okay, I've been sitting on this pirate idea forever. I'm finally going to draw it. And as the saying goes in Japanese, I drew the family's heirloom blade, which is sort of like saying, the ace up your sleeve. I finally played it, and that was Romance Dawn. And so I worked on a lot of the kind of the basic, the broad ideas for the worldview for that with Kushima-san. And at first it was just the gomunomi, so it was the gum fruit. And Kushima-san said, like, the gum fruit, or the rubber fruit, doesn't that seem like that probably exists already? And so that was when it turned into the gum fruit. So then while he was working on Romance Dawn was when his editor changed to Asada-san. And so he put all of the skill and all of the experience that he had built up over those years into this one shot, and the readers really seemed to like it. And I was super happy because I was like, finally, I made it out. I'm out into the world. I got out there. And then the second version of Romance Dawn, he worked on with Asada-san the entire time, that from start to finish. And that at the time, nobody in Jump was, there were nobody was taking breaks. So it was really hard for a newcomer, a rookie, to get their one shot into the magazine, because that's basically how it works. Is the one shots only run when someone is sick or is taking a
special issue.
Yeah, but just in the regular Jump.
Right.
And so it was like a miracle if you got a rookie artist in there, and there were there were never any holes to fill. So that was just the way it was at the time, and it was just my luck that there happened to be an opening that was going to be coming up, and the Jump editorial office said, in 2 weeks, can you draw if you can draw a 45-page story in 2 weeks, we'll throw it in there. What do you think? And I said, yes, I'll do it right away. And I got a little break from Watsuki Sensei's place and just whipped it up. And Kushima says that, and didn't you change the characters? Didn't you specifically change the characters from the first one that ran in the quarterly issue? And Oda said, yeah, I had some ideas about that. And the one in the quarter. So if anybody remembers, has read the two different versions of Romance Dawn, because I'm sure they're floating out there on the internet. Mm-hmm. The one in the quarterly, the first one, is the one that had Shanks, and that was the part I was serious about. I was like, okay, Shanks, this is my guy.
There's also the one that was based, that the Jump Festa special from like 6-7 years ago was based on, with a completely different female character.
Mm-hmm.
I think that was the second edition of Romance Dawn.
I honestly, I can't remember. It's been a while since I've read them as well. Yeah. But I knew, like, okay, this guy, this Shanks, this story, I want to tie that into the serialized version of this. But I don't know if I want to put that out into Jump, Weekly Shonen Jump itself. I don't want to put that out first. So okay, we'll throw out Luffy, we'll throw out the Rubberman stuff. But I wanted to keep Shanks's story kind of a secret from the average Jump readers. I didn't want to just draw the same thing that I would draw later on. So I kind of, I did a little head fake there, and that was what the second version of Romance Dawn was. And the moderator says, and after that, One Piece, eventually you got the One Piece serial started, and it won, it got first place in its very first chapter, and has, gone on to basically define the orthodox shonen manga style. What were you thinking at the time? How were you feeling at the time? And Oda says, at the time, or I am generally an optimist when it comes to looking at the rest of the world, but at root, I am kind of a pessimist. So I thought, oh, there's no way it's going to go this well. And I knew that, okay, I want to get to to the number one spot eventually, but I didn't think that it was going to just be a hit right off the bat like that. I was only thinking about how to survive at the start. I'd been given, okay, you have 10 weeks. That's what you get. That's what you're guaranteed. You get 10 weeks. And, I just needed to, I had my own rule. Like I needed at least 3 of those times for the readers to say, this was good. That was all I was focused on. And number one, like, no, didn't even cross my mind. And it's not like, obviously, just because you get number one doesn't mean your story is going to survive. So I was always kind of pessimistic on the inside. I was always afraid. So I was like, every week I was like, I got to make this better. I got to make this better. And Kushima says, and then once you got the serial started, like 2 years later already, it was getting animated. So did you change your mind? Did anything change for you after that point? And Oda said, no, it wasn't. It didn't really make a difference. I thought like, okay, great. I've got some publicity on my side. I always decided, okay, I'm not going to deal with the details of the anime. I'm going to be hands off. I knew, I was like, okay, I can't possibly concern myself. I can't deal with anything aside from this weekly manga. And I was not going to actually make my opinion. I wasn't going to be like, no, you can't do this, you can't do that. So I basically just didn't. I didn't have any orders about that. I was like, the anime is the anime, and if it's a little bit different from the original story, that's fine. People might like that. People might prefer that. They can do that. I considered it a very separate thing. And so now we will move to the next editor in the interview, which is Habuta. He was the second editor. So from Asada-san, next it moved to Habuta-san. And what part of the story was this part? Habuta says, I was the editor mostly for the Alabasta and the Sky Island arcs. So that was about 4 years after the manga started. And at the time, Oda was getting to the point where, okay, just the manga alone is not enough to satisfy me. He wanted the story. He wanted the franchise to kind of branch out. So it was probably about the time that his way of thinking about the series had changed, perhaps. And Oda says, I don't know. I had at that point I had seen. As a reader, I had seen many different manga find huge success. They become hits, and the manga was great. That's great, but then they would have these like we would get these cool toys, and the art in the anime would be really good. The animators would be great. There were all these series that really took off and became huge once other people kind of entered the picture and helped prop it up to a new level. And so at that point I was thinking like, yeah, it would be great if I could get that sort of support around me for my story. And so that's what I was thinking at the time. And, I wanted this ideal relationship between the manga and all, and other cross media, tie-ins and stuff. Habuta says the manga was popular. The popularity of the manga was pretty solid. We had a good foundation there. So the anime started, and then it was like, okay, what's the next step? That was the mindset at the time. Oda wanted the next goalpost to aim for. They were making movies for it every year, and it was like, okay, so what's next? What comes after that? And he says, oh, well, actually, I think it was when you were my editor, Habuta-san, that the Portrait of Pirates series started up. And there's a picture of Luffy, the very first POP figure from April of 2004 from Mega House. And Habitat says, yeah, man, that was amazing. Like, I was just stunned with how good those figures turned out. Like, it was a wake up call. I was like, wow, I didn't realize figures had gotten this good. And Oda says, yeah, the One Piece toys and physical merchandise, stuff like that is amazing right now. And it's because, this story, people who were readers when this story started 20 years ago, now they're the ones in these production roles that are putting this stuff together. So you feel the love in all of these different items that they come up with. They're really focused. They really want to do a good job. And even at the time, Mega House's POPs were so good. Like, they were just as good as the stuff that you see today.
I just realized now that the Zoro that I have is one of those Series 1 POPs.
Nice.
Yeah. The one that I bought from Alex.
These things get around. Habata-san would get the prototypes, I guess, or the finished products, and he would bring them to me, Oda says, because, he must have been like, man, this is so cool, I have to show him. And Habata says, yeah, I knew that. It's like, oh man, if Oda sees this, he's going to be so pumped up. And Oda's like, yeah, man, like, wow, this is awesome. I can't believe they're putting these out. And, it was the figure would be about 4,000 yen. So, $40. It was a little on the expensive side, but, oh man, but if it's this good, I thought, when Asada was the editor, we were just getting the story off the ground, and I only wanted to focus on the manga just to make sure that it survived. And as soon as my editor turned from Asada to Habuta, that was when all of the the media projects really started getting into motion. We would just have all of these ideas and proposals and things, and it made me realize that a different editor can really may really make a difference in the way that your franchise is developed. And Habuta says, yeah. So basically, in the long term, in the historical record of One Piece, my term as editor was the one where we really started expanding the media stuff. Oda says POPs. Aside from POPs, there was a bunch of other stuff too. That was when they built a Going Merry in Odaiba, and man, that was really cool. Which, yeah, I remember that.
And that's the picture that's in the magazine, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's right. It was there from 2003 to 2005. And the moderator asks, was there any difference in the manga? Your weekly meetings about the manga. And Oda says, yeah, we would meet up in person, to do the meetings as usual. But we also started. It was about Habata's period when it also started doing just meetings over the phone. So there would be different stuff kind of overlapping, and I just wanted as much time as possible to work on it. So, we just started having phone meetings instead, just save time. To that point, it would be like, okay, we're going to meet up at a cafe or a restaurant and have some food and, talk about what's going to happen in the story this week. But over the phone, he could have his sketch pad with him and sort of sketch out ideas, and plot threads and stuff like that. So, it occurred to me that this is actually kind of it makes it easier in some ways. However, the funny thing is talking on the phone actually can end up taking longer than meeting in person. I'm assuming it's probably because you just keep on talking and without being in that physical space, you don't realize like, oh, I got to do something. Let's wrap this up. I took the phone meetings pretty seriously when Habata-san was the editor. And lately, lately the meetings, the calls usually just start with me saying like, "Tell me something funny that happened this week. Tell me something interesting."
That's Oda saying this?
Yes, that's Oda. That's what he'll say to his new editors. Habuta says, when it comes time nowadays, when it comes time for Oda's editor to change, apparently they all tell, the outgoing editor will tell the incoming editor, like, make sure you have something funny to tell or something interesting to tell him on the phone. Make sure you have that before you do the meeting. So,
Wow.
Yeah. And Oda says, yeah, if you focus, if you're always focusing on stuff all the time, your brain gets tired. So you want that change of pace. You want something that is new and fun. The moderator says, so from your perspective, Habuta-san, what was the first impression that you had of Oda? And Habuta says he was already, a hit author at the time when I came in. So I was a little worried about meeting him. I didn't know what he was going to be like in person. And he was actually very serious about the fact that when we met, I was older than him. So he was like, don't call me Oda-sensei, call me Oda-kun. And so that actually made it easier for Habuta. And Oda's like, I'm in terms of personality, I am I'm like the athletic, like the team player type, where I'm very aware of the vertical hierarchy. So I cannot. I'm the kind of guy who I can't speak in, formal language to a senpai, to someone who's older than me. And that is the end of Habuta. And now we go to Bati Jean-Baptiste Hattori, who was the 6th editor. And this part's kind of funny because Oda calls his nickname for Hattori is Hattoriman. So you're going to hear that a lot.
He's one of the guys from the Takarajima adventure elsewhere in the magazine.
Yeah, and he's done a lot of the sort of like face of the editor, like media stuff. You'll see his picture.
He was on Hokotate.
Right. He's a very camera friendly guy, very handsome guy, and so they leverage that. So the Sky Island arc ended, and about the time that Foxy appeared, that was when the editor changed. And Oda says, so from that point on, there was Daisuke Watanabe, and then Kawashima, Onishi, and then Hattoriman. So the Asada period was, just building up the manga. It was working on the manga. Habuta-san was the expanding into media, and right after that point, there was a very rapid change in editors. They were just switching out. I felt like they were changing them up on me all the time. Bati says Daisuke-san was about 2 years, and Kawashima and Onishi were both pretty short. I think it was like 1 year and 1 year. And so at the time of Onishi-san, it was that was when they started switching to 2 editors, where you had a One Piece manga editor and a One Piece media editor. And I have now done, Bati has done both the manga and the media. And that, I did that for about 5 years total between the two. So about 2.5 years with the manga and 2.5 with the media side. Oda says, yeah, I was with you for a long time, Hattoriman. It was right around the Watanabe start, was the first time that I had an editor who was younger than me. And this was a big change for Oda, because when the editor is older, you have this feeling like, okay, let's work with this guy. I'll rely on him. I'll take his advice to heart. But then when it's a younger when it's a younger editor, then it's like he's like the kohai. He's like the younger, the new guy, and I would feel compelled to teach them. So I had to teach them how this works. But they were so short. Like the period was so short. And I'm guessing this was probably just this was the decision. This was the way that the Jump editorial department wanted to work at the time. But for me, it was like I would basically spend a year yelling at them about stuff. No, not like that, not like that. And right around the time that it would be like, okay, they're finally getting the hang of this, then the editor would switch and I would have to start all over again. And I talked to the editor in chief, like, come on, can't you give me a break here? Like I was complaining about it. It was like once you finally were on the same wavelength, then the guy is done. And I said, I need at least 2 or 3 years with one guy. And right after complaining about that, the first one that I got switched in was Hattoriman. Bati says, I was the editor right around the end of Thriller Bark and getting into the Shabondi archipelago. And that was, it was even at the time, it was already like, okay, we're printing over 2 million copies per first print of the volume. So, it was a monster manga already, obviously, by that point. And Oda says, yeah, actually, it was perfect timing that Hattoriman came in at that point, because then we had Amazon Lily, the Island of Women. Oh, it was so convenient to have him there. And Buddy's like, whoa, hang on now. Oda says, see, I'm drawing this stuff because I want the readers to enjoy it, to have fun. And the very first reader is my editor, of course. So, the first step is making sure that the editor enjoys, the next chapter. So there's a tendency for the kind of the specific mode of the manga to kind of evolve a little bit to reflect that editor's tastes. And, so when I would draw something with a little extra skin, like, oh yeah, he really liked that. So then I'd be like, okay, that was good feedback. Like that worked. And so, yeah, maybe I may have gotten a little carried away with some of the fan service at that point. Body says, look, that wasn't by design. That wasn't my intention. Man, if now when this is done, I'm just going to be like, he was the editor who likes women. So there you go. That's his reputation.
Worst things to be known for.
Yeah, I guess. Now, what was it like when you two first met? Bati says, so at the end of Onishi-san's period when he was handing it over to me, I went along to pick up the finished chapter. And there was, it was like, okay, well, let's go somewhere and get something to eat. So the three of us went to a family restaurant, went to a diner, and to my surprise, like the stuff that we talked about, it would be like, okay, are you married? Do you have a girlfriend? It was stuff like that. Nothing about One Piece at all. And at the time, I had just gotten married. My wife was pregnant. And I remember Oda saying something like, okay, well, then I can't push you too hard. And so I thought he was going to be meaner. I thought he was going to be way more strict. So I was like, what? Oh, okay. So that came as a surprise. And Oda was like, wait, what did you think about me before that point? And Badi says, I had seen, from a distance, I had seen Daisuke and Kawashima and Onishi, dealing with One Piece, and there was one time where I spotted something weird in One Piece and was going to fix, like, oh, something's wrong, and I was going to fix it. From the editors, from the editorial department. And Daisuke came rushing in and was like, no, Oda's going to fix that. Do not fix it. Do not do that. And, he was super serious about it. And so I was like, oh, well, I guess that means he must be like, this guy must be like a monster. He must be like a drill sergeant. Like he's just super picky about him being the one to correct it the way that he sees right. And Oda's like, yeah, well, when it comes to the manga, sure. But Bati says, after we were done eating, then we went back to the studio, and then I got the lecture of like, okay, this is what One Piece is. This is how it works. And I was just amazed because this lecture was like, okay, here's the story of the manga. Here are the contents. Here are the subplots that are in play. This is how the world works. This is how I view the series, and not just that, like the actual story details, but also like this is the part that the kids like. This is the sort of stuff that we do that gets a really good reaction. It was basically this is the current status of One Piece, and so this is the type of production, behind the scenes production that we need. He basically gave me a whole primer on everything that is One Piece as a property. And I remember thinking, like, I have never seen anyone who is this smart. And man, it's like to be at a meeting, to get a lecture like that, like that's got to be pretty amazing. Just personally speaking from my perspective. Oda says, yeah, lately there are so many things to connect together that I can't even do it all in one meeting. But you gotta let them know about what is supposed to come up in the future. Otherwise, you need to explain all of that stuff in order for them to be on the same page as you. So after that, with Bati, he also went through the Paramount War arc and started into the New World. Oda says, after the Paramount War was over, I had that 4-week break. He's like, that was you, right, Hatoniman? Bati says, yes, that was me. You said, okay, I'm gonna start a new arc of the series. We're gonna start something new. So I want
It also
a bit
means
of a
he was
break.
the editor during Marineford.
Yes, Paramount War, Marineford. Yes,
Right.
same thing. And he said, yeah, I want to start something new. So give me a little of a break. And I was like, okay, sure. But when we come back, you're gonna have the color pages at the start of the magazine. We're gonna have more pages, and you're gonna have to do some extra colors. Not just for the color spread, but also some of the manga itself. And Oda's like, oh yeah, right. And that was the conditions for getting my 4-week break. So he said basically that during that break, I relaxed, I had some fun, and I was also, thinking over, kind of brainstorming what I was going to do next. Bati says that was the Paramount War. Marineford was really tough because that was also when we were doing Strong World. And Oda says, at this time, like I was so locked up, I was so busy with stuff that I didn't have time to like put everything into perspective for what was going to come up in the future. It was like each and every week was like its own separate thing. I would have to get through it and reach the end goal. And then at that point I would be like, okay, oh boy, what am I doing next week? Because he had to spend time working on the movie and thinking about the movie at that point. So it sounds like rather than kind of flowing all the chapters together and knowing where he's going to be X number of chapters from now, at this point he was just like, okay, one at a time. Because Strong World, he was involved in just about everything from the plot to the character design, all of that stuff. And Oda says at the time the movies were getting a bit stale. They were having trouble. They weren't quite getting the results that they did in the past.
They had just done 2 recap movies.
Yeah. So clearly it was like, okay, something needs to change. And so the very first producer of the anime, Shimizu-san, came to me, Oda says, and he was, now for my part, I am perfectly happy to just leave the movies, the anime, all of that stuff to the rest, to the people who are in charge of that. But I thought, at the same time, I think that they're very important. They're important as a promotional tool. And I was really, really worried about, okay, what sort of image does this set for my story if they should stop making them? So if they stop making the movies, then does that have a knockdown effect on the anime? And what if the anime stops and then that has an effect on the popularity of the original story? I really didn't want this like sort of chain of failure to start up. So, we talked on the phone with we talked with the editor in chief. And so, made the decision like, okay, I'm going to get super involved with this movie. But I still had my weekly manga to do. And so it was basically like every week the editor in chief would come to the meetings with me and would like, give the pitch like, please don't take breaks. Please don't let the manga lapse during this time. And Bati says, at the time, the editor-in-chief was Sasaki-san from Bakuman who was in Bakuman at the time, and of course,
currently living in America.
Yes, a familiar figure to us all, especially if you listen to the Shonen Jump podcast. And it was like we would just work ourselves to the bone over the manga and would be totally wiped out. And then at the end, Sasaki-san would show up and it would be like, everybody would spring to attention like, okay, we're sorry, we're trying our best. Oda says, Sasaki-san was Watsuki-sensei's editor back in the day, so I knew him since I was an assistant, and he was very much in my corner when it came time for my story to start. He was like, this guy can do it. He knows what he can do, and so he was very much a huge source of a backing for Oda in the editor's department. So, I knew like, okay, I'm here because of him in part, so I got to pay back the favor. And Bati says, thanks to Oda's hard work, and the success of that movie, that was around the point that One Piece kind of jumped up to a new plateau. It was always the top series, up to that point, but it was like an explosion at this point. And I was like, it was such an honor to be the editor while this was happening. After that, the New World arc started, and they brought in Isaka to be the manga editor, who I believe that was the one that we interviewed for OPP Japan.
That sounds right. Yeah.
Yeah, and then Bati says I became the media editor, and so then my job was like, okay, what are we going to do for the next movie? We had the One Piece 10, that One Piece exhibit. I was like, okay, we gotta, this thing. The ball is rolling here. We got this huge phenomenon on our hands. Like, we got to keep it going. I was like desperate to keep up the success. So up to that point, we had been focused on like, okay, let's any chance to expand like the product tie-ins and media stuff, and so we would do everything we could. There was a ton of consumption of our stuff after the movie. So after that point, we were able to be much pickier about it. So I wanted to turn this into sort of like to exaggerate a bit, to turn it into like a Disney thing where you could say like, okay, we'll do this, but you can't do that. To set up some foundational rules to kind of control the merchandising and the all the various ways that you would sell the property. See, because the problem is like if you just try to blow it out, if you just like, okay, this is One Piece's time, everything must be One Piece, every possible thing, then you use it up, it becomes disposable. And I was absolutely determined not to let that happen to One Piece. And Oda says, because of that, we were able to think about our product development on more of like a yearly basis. So at the start, it would be like, okay, it's in. This is our time. It's hot right now. We have to strike while the iron is hot and sell everything we possibly can. They would develop and put out these video games in like 3 months. But after that, it was like, okay, we don't need to do that. We're confident now. 3 years from now, One Piece is still going to be big. It's going to pay off. It's not going to be like, oh, it fizzled out and now we have this expensive thing that we did that no one is really interested in.
It's probably why they've only released 3 movies in the last 8 years.
Sure, yeah. And so, at that point, it was like, okay, don't worry about One Piece. It's going to be around. It'll still, we got this bedrock foundation. So take your time. Make something nice. You had that kind of faith in the 2 to 3 year window, which is really hard to do. But Hattoriman and the editorial department, they really helped us with the branding with with other companies and partners and stuff to make that a reality. And Bati says, I just wanted Oda to focus on the manga. I was like, okay, don't worry. The editors, we're going to handle this. I'm pretty sure I told that to Isaka. I said, like, let us worry about this stuff. You just focus on the manga. And it was only if something was super important to bring to his attention would we go to ask for input, but otherwise we would have it. And I had, because of my experience with Oda, I would be like, okay, that was the criteria that I used to make decisions on his behalf. I would be like, okay, no, Oda would not like this. He wouldn't want this to be like this. And then later on, when I would ask him, he would be like, oh, well, no, I mean, that would be totally cool. So it turned out that my standards were actually much stricter than Oda's. And so, yeah, I'm sure that some of our, the product makers were not particularly happy about that. But, I believed I was always going under the assumption that like, my intuition here is the same as Oda-san's. And Oda says, yeah, but like that's how I want it to be. That's the kind of person that you want to have as your editor. Because otherwise I would have all this extra work to do aside from my manga, and I wouldn't be able to keep up. And Buddy says, yeah, well, I'm just trying to help. So the moderator says, now until the point that Bati-san became the editor or worked as an editor, there were many things that changed up to that point. Was there anything that changed for you, Oda, like mentally speaking? How did you feel about stuff? And Oda says the biggest thing for me was that I had a family, at that point compared to when he started. And Bati says, you've always been very, very stoic with your outlook on your work. You're extremely strict about it. I remember, you scolded me about stuff. Like, no, it has to be like this. It can't be like that. On many occasions. But it's still, you weren't as bad as I had heard. You weren't as scary as I had heard. And so maybe the fact that you had that family, you got married and had a kid, maybe that helped kind of calm you down a little bit. And Oda says, well, you can't just be super disciplined and Spartan about stuff and still lead a real life. So having a family makes a person become softer. You realize, you put things into perspective for other people. And Buddy says, yeah, you would prioritize anything that had to do with families or kids. So Oda says, yeah, it would be like, oh, your kid has the, athletic day at school, which is this, it's just like a big thing where
anyone who's watched anime knows,
right.
I think.
The family comes out, they set up the picnic blanket, and the kids
Mm-hmm.
do the races and the, throwing the balls into the hoops, the red and the white and all that stuff. Oh yeah, the undokai, the athletic day. Yeah, go ahead, take the day off, do that. I love my kids, so obviously I understand that other people feel that same way about theirs. So, the changes in your own circumstances will, you'll understand and you'll be able to react to other people's needs in the same way. But he asks, do you think there was any change in the manga itself because of that? And Oda says, well, I don't think I could have drawn Robin's story if I didn't have a family. Before that, I would have been like too embarrassed, too self-conscious about that. Drawing this like family drama between people who are related, because I only have, it's me and my parents to call my family. But once I got married and I had kids, then you can see, you understand the family bonds better. And it became a lot more natural. It's more second nature for me to be able to draw sort of family stories. So the moderator asks, what was the thing that Oda said to you that made you the happiest, Bati? What was the best thing he ever said to you? And Bati said, there was a time where I went with Oda to a Yasutaka Nakata event. So that would be the songwriter from Capsule who's and Perfume and stuff that has collaborated with One Piece on the movie songs and all kinds of stuff like that. They're very good friends now. And so Buddy says, I went with Oda to one of his events, and I don't exactly remember where this was said, but at the time, we got to talking, and we were talking about manga, and Oda said, like, Hattori-man, he really understands the entertainment. He really understands what makes shonen manga great. And that was probably the best thing he ever said about me. But, who knows? He could have been lying. And Oda's like, no, it wasn't a lie. Like, in that sense, I have absolute trust in you. And Bati says, but it was like, I was so happy. Like, it was amazing to have been the editor at this incredibly pivotal point in One Piece with, Marineford, this turning point in the series. At the time, it didn't feel, I didn't understand it, or I didn't feel it. I was like, oh, well, yeah, it's good, but like, is it that good? That was my reaction. But I know it sounds weird to say it that way, but that's kind of how I felt. And Oda's like, yep, I totally get what you mean. That's exactly how I felt too. And then Bati says, but once I was taken off editing the manga, and I went back later and reread all of the stuff with Marineford, and I was like, oh man, this is amazing. Like, it's so strange how that changes on you. And Oda says, yep, me too. You go back and you reread it later, and you're like, wow, yeah, this is good. So when you're drawing it, you're always trying to imagine what the reader's reaction is going to be. And it's startling. It's kind of scary when the reaction that the readers have is greater. It's beyond the bounds of what you were expecting. It's a sign, like, okay, so if the reaction is greater than what you imagined, it means that you're not fully controlling the response to your manga, because you're trying to think, okay, this is what I want the readers to think, this is what I want them to find interesting, and this is what I want them to feel at this point in the series. And so if you're not controlling that can be really scary. So that in that sense, the Marineford arc was kind of a series of very startling revelations, because it was like, oh man, this just blew up and I wasn't expecting it. And here at this point, we get to the last editor in this series, which is Sugita, who is the 8th editor. Bati was the 6th, Sugita was the 8th. The moderator says, so from Bati's time, then it passed on to the Isaka period, and then there was Sugita after that. And Oda says, maybe this was all a mistake, but I remember at the time, there was another artist who I'm good friends with, so I'm assuming this is probably Shimabukuro, at least going by reputation. But another artist that I was friends with, I heard about Sugita from him, and he was like, "Yeah, man, there's this crazy editor named Sugita." And I remember thinking like, "Oh boy, I hope I don't get that guy." And then they sent me Sugita, and Sugita's like, the very first thing you said was, "Nope, change, switch him out, different guy."
But he stuck with him, so.
He was like, I was really shocked. And Oda was like, yep, that's right. That was when we first met. That was how we met. But once we actually worked together, I was like, oh, this guy's actually pretty good at it. He knows what he's doing. And Sugita says, thank you. So like Bati-san said, Oda-san is very stoic about his work. He's very serious and demanding about his manga. But it was a huge learning process for me. It was very worthwhile to have been the editor. And the best thing in my background was the fact that I had been a reader of One Piece since I was like 7 or 8 years old. I had just been another person in the crowd who was a fan of the series as a kid. So I was like that sort of direct line to the readership, and I sort of wondered, should I tell him, like, should I be honest about my reactions, or like what I wanted to see as a fan of the series, rather than coming into it from a professional angle. And Oda says, the thing is, Sugita is like what they call reaction gaining, which means like a reaction specialist comedian, like someone who basically has very exaggerated and crazy reactions to whatever topic you bring up or whatever you do with them. So he's very good at like livening up the place. He has good reactions to manga, so it's really cool when he reads the manga, because you get such good feedback from him. And he's like, man, I bet you must have so many friends. And so he does like, well, they don't invite me out as much since I joined the editorial department. They're all like, oh, don't waste your time. Sugita won't show up. And he says, actually, one of the good things about becoming the editor for One Piece is that I couldn't get out of work any longer. It's like he had no excuse after that point. It was like, even when I was waiting for Oda-san to finish the chapter, I would always, like, in the back of my head, even while I'm doing other stuff, I would always be thinking about that. I couldn't get the One Piece manga out of my brain. So yeah, I probably lost a few friends during that period. But I was learning so much on the job. And Oda says, when and you even got busier. So Sugita, he did the same thing that Bati did, where he went from manga editor to media editor after his shift. And Oda says, you got even busier as the media editor, rather than when you were manga editor. We've had a ton of media outreach with One Piece. You were there with the One Piece Tower, the Tokyo Tower, and OnePiece.com, getting all that stuff set up. So it's like I want it to be like as much work as like an entirely different series. Just working on this stuff. And Sugita says, this is the this is the 20th anniversary, so obviously we were especially focused on all of the tie-ins and stuff. But I'm still trying to think of like other cool stuff to do, because I want Oda-san to be excited about it, and I want the readers to be excited about it. And the moderator says, at this point, when Sugita became the media editor, that is when the manga editor became Naito-san, and so he is the current editor. And Naito says, well, it's the it's the 20th anniversary, and the switch happened right where Sanji was dropping out of the story, and it was like, oh, will he come back? Will he? Won't he? So that was when I came in, and so there was obviously a lot of pressure with that, and I'm doing my best. But I'm still trying to kind of figure out and to think about what is it that I can do? What is it that I can bring to the process? And the first thing that I learned, or the first thing that I started with, was when Oda calls, you pick up right away. Do not let any calls drop. You must answer the phone right away. And Oda says, yeah, when Naito came in as the editor, that was around the time that we started, for One Piece, we started doing the Twitter stuff and getting the Line account going in Japan. So trying to branch out with the social media aspect more. And Naito says, yes, we have more tools at our disposal to connect with the fans now. So I wanted to be proactive in making use of them. And Oda says, Naito's a very serious guy. He takes the work very seriously, but your problem is that you are super, super low key, easily the weakest of any of my editors in that regard. And Sugita had been the most excitable and the most outlandish. So when Naito's like, yeah, this is good, that's like, it doesn't feel like anything. It doesn't feel like he's serious about it. But the surprising thing was that I told him about that. I was like, hey, come on, man. Like, let's see some life here. And about 2 weeks later, all of a sudden he was like a different person entirely. He was like all amped up and was, like, he was like a different person entirely. And I was very impressed by that. And Naito says, thank you very much. I'm trying to do my best to make things fun for the readers as best that I can. And that is the end of the editors and Oda interview.
Wow, that was very enlightening.
Yeah, I thought I found it really interesting. Like, as I was reading through it, I was like, man, all this stuff, especially the stuff at the beginning with Kushima, where they're describing like the sort of the mindset that each of them had when he was working on all his one shots. Like it was they're very open about it, and very honest with how they were feeling at the time and their mindset. And that was really interesting, because you don't get that sort of stuff very often.
Right. Any final thoughts?
I thought it was also interesting, like sort of the stuff that he was talking about with Bati about their sort of plans for the series and how they were viewing like all the multimedia aspects of it, especially around Marineford and Strong World. Like, that was pretty interesting, because I imagine that must have been a very kind of distinct time in just the production of One Piece. And you look back on it now, obviously One Piece is still very popular, but there was that plateau there, right just around the start of our podcast, where it was just like the news each week was incredible record breaking stuff, one after the other. And things have calmed down a bit from that point. And I would imagine we're probably entering a new kind of transition phase where they're kind of wondering, what should we do about the movies? Especially after, now that we've hit the 20th anniversary, it's like, okay, what comes next? I imagine they're probably thinking about that sort of stuff right now. But it was interesting to read about that from their perspective, having seen it from the fan side.
Honestly,
already.
It's probably time for them to start thinking about the production of the next film, given that the last one came out in 2 years ago?
Well, it was last year.
It was
Well,
a year and a half ago, July 15th.
yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
In Japan, it would have come, yeah. Um,
Which means we probably won't see another one for like 2.5 years, but they got to start thinking about producing it.
yeah, it'll be interesting to see what they come up with, and I'm not really sure what they have planned. I know that there's some big video game project that they're making it sound like it's the biggest video game yet.
All right.
Which who knows what that means, but they've kind of got an all hands on deck approach at. I think it's another Bandai Namco game, so we'll see what they do with that. But yeah, aside from that, it's hard to guess like what the next new, bold new step that they're going to take. But as we can see here, like that's clearly something that is on their minds all the time. So we will, I guess we'll find out.
Alrighty. Well, thank you very much, Stephen, for taking us through that, and we'll move on to the next part of the show.
Good.
This is the Piece Together segment where we take your questions, comments, and theories. We are recording this way earlier than usual, so chances are you're going to be upset because we're not reading your question. So why don't we start with our email? First comes from Just Martin, who says, what has been the best piece of information that you all have learned from Oda in an SBS? Ed?
Oh, man. I don't know. I like the drawings that he does of like the supernovas as children and all the other people as children. It's not really information because there isn't really information that I care about in the SPS usually.
There's sometimes some really interesting information. I can't think of anything super specific that he announced. There are definitely some questions that have shed big light on things, but the things that pop into my head that I do like are kind of seeing his insight on the process. And also, I recall, I think during Skypiea, there were some of the SBSs where he was talking about international releases, which was very cool. They did like an international corner. His not caring about birthdays is always a fun running joke there. There's a lot to enjoy in the SBS, but I should have prepared more for that question because I can't think of very much off the top of my head. Next one comes from Kyle, who says, hey, One Piece Podcast crew, got 2 comments for you. First, in Thriller Bark, when Kuma moved Luffy's pain to where Zoro wanted to take it, do you think he just pushed it around, or did he carry it like a giant pain balloon?
No, it was extended from his... It was still attached to his hand at that point, wasn't it?
Now I'm trying to remember how exactly... He, pushed it out from his back.
Yeah.
And I think it kind of just floated over to Zoro, right?
Yeah, pretty much. I'm not sure if it was attached to him.
I think a giant pain balloon is the perfect description for that. It's shaped like a paw, but regardless, it was a giant pain balloon. Also, he says, what do you think about Katakuri's teeth being knocked out when he got that scar, and then replaced them with mochi teeth? Yeah, I don't think that really makes any sense. All right, let's see what we have next. This one comes from Nick, who was just asking, how does he join Discord? And I know you had said that you had to send proof of patronage, but I don't remember how or where. Would love to join the Dispiece segment. Please let me know, and thank you. So our Discord channel, I don't know if there's a short link, but let me see if I could get it's discord.gg and then / and please write this down because there's no way you're going to remember this. JSC GMQ. So it's discord.gg / JSCGMQ. There's some of those that are capitalized. I don't know if that's important, but if it is, it's the SC, G, and Q of those that are capitalized. And if you want to send proof for patronage, you just would send that screen cap to the main chat or to one of the higher-ups on our Discord. So yeah, that basically answers that question, I believe. So that does it for emails. Ed, do you have Patreon open? Not Patreon. Reddit open.
I have a couple of Reddit questions. First one from Samuel1698 says, "Hey, last week you guys talked about the chapter's title. I believe the latest chapter's title was chosen because of the previous week. Chapter 884, who is that? Although referring to who's responsible for the sea slugs disappearing. In chapter 885, it's Brule, which, when read back to back, can also be interpreted as, who's going to help Luffy get out of this situation? It's Brule. But that doesn't seem like a very Oda thing to do. Also, didn't Luffy mention during his fight with Doflamingo that he could run after deflating from Gear 4, but chose not to because of the birdcage? I was under the impression that the Gear 4 repercussions were all his haki and a big chunk of stamina, not all of his strength."
I think that is correct, but I don't remember him ever saying that. And I don't have the English Dressrosa volumes up in front of me at the moment, so I can't double check that. But I thought he was just pretty knocked out and couldn't move anywhere for most of that.
And that was he'd been fighting longer at that point with Doflamingo than he had with in this arc.
I guess it wasn't that long. I think it was only a couple chapters in Gear 4.
No, he went through the entire Coliseum besides.
Oh, I mean, it had been a long day, I think we could
very.
say. But this has also been a somewhat long day.
I guess, yeah. Yeah, that's true. He beat Cracker already.
I mean, I think the discussion we had last week was correct. Yeah. That's all I got. I don't know. I don't think that's what it is. I think Oda changed it around a little bit.
I do like the thing he pointed out with the titles too. That's nice.
Yeah, they have been kind of random, weird titles. So I guess maybe next week we'll find out if that continues.
All right, next one comes from Shadow Iris, who says, "Hey, OPP, a few weeks ago I asked you which nationalities the supernovas would have if they were from the real world. Could you do the Shichibukai? Thanks again for all the hard work." That's a good one. How about crocodiles from
Egypt? I should probably bring that up. I mean, you're really pulling the low hanging fruit there. Let's pull these up. These guys up.
Bucky is from France.
You think? Just because he's a clown? He's not a mime. There's a difference.
maybe he's from Ireland with the big red nose.
Let me go in the order I have here from the One Piece wiki. So Mihawk is from France. Let's solve that right there.
No, he's from Romania.
Is he?
Dude, he's a vampire.
Yeah, but that mustache.
He's French Canadian.
maybe he's Quebecois, yeah. You know what? Let's just say that. The hat also is French. That like musketeer.
Well, and he's kind of based off of. No, I mean he's based off of the.
He's not literally Dracula. I mean, yeah, there are vampire aspects, but there are also French aspects. Is there like a French area in Romania, or vice versa, a Romanian area in France? That's where he would be from. Then we got Kuma.
Oh, maybe he's Russian. You know, he's cold and.
Yeah, I can see that. Yeah, I didn't really think about that. And he, yeah, no, that works. I was trying to think of a KGB related thing, but I can't for Kuma necessarily. He's not really stealthy at all.
Yeah. I was thinking maybe Hancock would be Chinese based off the way she dresses.
And I mean the entire Lolly, yeah.
Yeah, it's very Chinese.
It's very Chinese, yeah. I think that's fair. Buggy, you determined was French because you mixed him up with a mime? Is that what it is?
Or he's Irish because he's got a big red nose.
Wow. We're gonna offend everyone this week. Who? I'm trying to think. You know what country Buggy would be from? I don't know. What about Weevil, Ed? Your favorite?
Oh. God.
What's a country no one likes? There's no answer here. The one thing I learned about traveling recently is that we have fans in every single country. Because there were fans when I went to Peru, you know, people were chatting me, Norway. So no matter what answer you give here, Ed, you will offend someone. So please, Ed, what country is Weevil from?
I don't know. He's from one of those northern countries with blonde-haired people, probably.
Yeah, I guess that's true. Perhaps.
Maybe Sweden or something. I don't know.
Just because of the hairstyle?
What about Blackbeard? Blackbeard was or Jinbei.
Well, which do you want to do first?
Let's do Jinbei first.
He's from the ocean. He
From Atlantis.
he would be Japanese. I mean,
Probably, yeah.
and that's an easy one.
Blackbeard's American, probably.
Where's the actual Blackbeard from? I should look that
Well, he
up.
died in North Carolina.
Did he?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. You know, I think I actually knew that. He was English, Blackbeard. So, I mean, he does seem like that kind of, stereotypical, swarmy English pirate, which would make sense since that's literally who Blackbeard was.
That is what he do.
I think the biggest question here is who is Gecko Moria and where is he from?
Oh man.
That's see, that would be Romanian, I think. That's the Transylvanian kind of like monsters and ghouls, and I don't know how you can't. Mihawk has to be from France. Anyway, Doflamingo.
Oh.
He's more Russian to me than Kuma is.
Well, then where do you think Kuma's from?
Like if you had to say which Seven Warlord is Vladimir Putin, I'd say Doflamingo. Take that as you will.
I guess.
Not Crocodile even. I'd say Doflamingo. Because he's pulling the strings. See how that works? I don't know where Kuma would be from. Or I feel like Doflamingo as a Russian fits pretty well, right? I don't know. Sure. Maybe as a Russian oligarch specifically. They're all the worst aspects of the countries we're talking about. We're going to lose all our listeners this week. So Egypt for Crocodile, we said. So we have Trafalgar Law is our last one.
Oh, he's probably actually Japanese.
Yeah, I mean, technically they're all Japanese.
Maybe he's South Korean. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. We've done a terrible job at that question. What's next?
Oh, no, that was it. There was very few questions this week.
Yeah, I guess so. Okay.
I think, there was someone who Yeoman Axel put some fan art in the topic as well, so check that out.
Cool. I guess I'll round us off for our Piece Together segment. We will have our regular size one next week. We'll see you then. This has been the One Piece Podcast, episode 496 for the week of Monday, November 20th, 2017. We are reaching the end of our year, and that means we have lots of cool stuff coming up. Episode 500 will be coming out on December 18th. We have an interview with the voice of Ace, that's Toshio Furukawa, and his wife, who is the voice of Gimlet, who, if you remember who that is, you deserve to listen to this podcast, and you probably should be doing more than that. So that's going to be really cool. Looking forward to that. We'll also have a written version of that interview in full. That should be on the site around the same time as well. There's a lot of other cool stuff happening at the end of the year because there's always cool stuff happening at the end of the year, including Jump Festa 2018, which will be that weekend right before our 500th episode. So hopefully we'll have a cool Jump Festa segment for our 500th episode. If you're going to be in Japan, that's going to be at the Messe Coliseum or whatever arena, whatever it's called, in Japan. That's Friday, December 15th through Sunday, December 17th. Usually the Super Stage show for One Piece is on that Saturday. We will have live coverage as we usually do. Oda has promised never to return to the event, and yet has made some sort of either appearance or written message of some sort each year, so we will cover that. It's been, the official One Piece website's also been doing a pretty good job covering that as well, so you can keep an eye on that, but we'll post as much as we can in English that night. I will make sure that I torture our news reporters that weekend as much as possible, so look forward to that. Yeah, and hopefully we'll have, some familiar voices at the end of the year to celebrate the 500th episode milestone. But that's gonna do it. Ed, where could the good people out there contact us?
You're Zach_Logan on Twitter. I'm Edward E. One Piece. Podcast can be found at onepiecepodcast.com. Twitter.com, YouTube.com, and Facebook.com/One Piece Podcast. OnePiecePodcast@gmail.com is our email address. One Piece Podcast is our Skype name. Please support us. Patreon.com/One Piece Podcast. Leave us some piece together. Reddit.com/r/One Piece Podcast. Subscribe on SoundCloud. Subscribe on Google Play. Subscribe, rate, and review on Apple Podcasts. Or call us on our phone number. Zach?
That phone number is 347-497-MAGI.
Maji.
That phone number again is 347-497-6254. Call anytime.
Anytime.
With your questions, your comments, your theories. I want to say a big thank you again to everyone who attended our panel at Anime NYC. It was a really fun convention. I have not heard if it's been confirmed if it's coming back next year, but we will definitely try and get a panel if it is and if they take us, because it's really fun to be able to just take the subway after work and do a panel and then go home. And Jump Fest is coming up again, so keep an ear to the ground for the latest news that comes from that. And if you have anything, or if you have any guests you want to see, if you have anything you want to see from us to celebrate our 500th episode, if you personally have any One Piece podcast memories you'd like to share with us, we're approaching that episode, and we would definitely like to hear from you. We'll probably do an extended Piece Together segment just about your thoughts on the podcast, a little bit more self-indulgent than usual. So please send those in as well as that approaches. So, thank you all so much for listening. We're going to see you next week with the return of our manga recap, a double anime recap, Piece Together, and a lot more. I want to give one more big thanks to Steven for coming on his birthday. Thank you, Steven, for going through One Piece Magazine Volume 3 and everything else that you do for us. So we will see you next week. My name is Zach.
My name is Ed.
See you then, everyone. Goodbye.
Goodbye. Follow Steven at Translatosaurus.